All right. Well, hello and welcome, everyone. This is another episode of the Residency podcast with the Texas A&M Dermatology Interest Group. My name's Holly, and I'm a third year at Texas A&M College of Medicine. And this is Dr. Haley Olds. She's a PGY4 at Wayne State University, and we're going to be talking about her program today. So, Dr. Olds, if you'd like to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at Wayne State.
Yeah, sounds great. So I'm Haley. I grew up in the Metro Detroit area. I went to the University of Michigan for undergrad and then Wayne State for medical school. And then I stayed on for dermatology residency. And I'm one of the chief residents this year, actually.
Yes, ma'am. Alrighty. And then kind of through your progression from undergrad to med school, did you do a research year at any point in that timeline?
I did not. So I went straight from college to med school, and then I didn't take any gaps in my med school time either.
Okay. And then I saw that you had done an intern year. So how did that whole process work with Wayne State going from that to the official dermatology program elsewhere?
Yeah, so it was pretty smooth. So I ended up doing my intern year at Henry Ford, which was where I had done a lot of my rotations during medical school. And one really nice thing about that was I got to do a research month during it. So during my research month, I did it with Wayne State Dermatology. And I also feel like I had a bit of an advantage because I had Wayne State was my home dermatology program and I rotated there as a medical student. So I feel like the transition was pretty easy between intern year and residency.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to hear. So, kind of staying in the same area,
Mhm.
in a place that you're familiar. So, that's awesome. So, a little bit more about Wayne State. Can you kind of tell us about the location, how many hospitals y'all work with, and just kind of the general setup?
Yeah, definitely. So our program is a little bit unique where we're not really associated with one particular hospital. We have three main sites. So that is the VA, which is downtown Detroit, and then two Wayne Health Clinics. So we have one in Troy, which is a northern suburb of Detroit, and then one in Dearborn, which is like more of a western suburb of Detroit. And then we work at a couple of other locations. So we go to a clinic at Carmanos, which is the Cancer Institute here in Detroit. And then when we are on consults, we cover all of the Detroit Medical Center hospitals that are downtown Detroit as well. And then our pathology lab is actually in Monroe, Michigan, which is about 40 minutes south of Detroit. And we spend a month there every year. And then there's a couple other like private practices that we go to like once or twice a year.
Okay, yeah. So, y'all are really kind of all over that area. Would you say that kind of each year you're spending time at all of those? I know you mentioned for the one you're spending a month there every year, but is the breakdown kind of similar each year or is it different?
It's somewhat similar. I would say when you're a first year, you're at the VA the most. And then as you go along, you're more at the Wayne Health Clinics. I mean, you're still at the VA a lot, but when you're in your second and third year, you get your continuity clinic, which is either at our Troy or our Dearborn clinic. So then you're guaranteed to be there at least one day a week, every week.
Okay. So as far as Wayne State goes, do y'all have any fellowships that you're associated with?
Yeah, so actually just this past year we got approved for a Mohs fellowship. And it's actually kind of interesting because it's with Dr. Kuba, who his office is in Toledo, and he kind of works in the Toledo, Ohio area, which I know seems kind of weird because it's like in a different state. But actually, Toledo is about like 45 minutes an hour south of Detroit. So that's why it's like that.
Okay, I gotcha. So the Mohs Fellowship, and then how many students does your program have in total?
Students or residents?
Oh, residents, sorry.
Okay, perfect. We have four per year, so 12 total.
Okay. And then your program, when you're looking at applicants that are going to be coming in, do you know if they're looking specifically if applicants have a research year or if there's anything that's kind of heavily weighted for your program?
Yeah, so I think if somebody has a research year, it could be helpful if it was something that they were really interested in, but it's definitely not something that's required. I think that we tend to be kind of split on people that have done research years and people that haven't. So I think the one thing that our program looks at a lot is if you signaled us. So I think that we only review applicants that gave us either a gold or a silver token, which I think is also true for most programs across the country now too.
Yeah, it seems like that's coming out more and more now that those changes are solidified. So, okay. And then for your institution, do y'all accept DOs or IMG students? Is that something that you know the policy on if there's anything official?
Yeah, so we have had DO residents and IMGs as well. I think for the IMGs though, they do have to have a J1 visa. But right now we have a resident that she actually did medical school in Ireland, but she was able to get a green card before starting her residency.
Okay. So it seems like you guys have people from all over, which is super exciting. I know a lot of people will be happy to hear that. And then speaking of kind of away rotations and things for medical students, are away rotators guaranteed an interview at your program, or is it more of just a case by case?
Yeah, so I would say we usually interview all away rotators. I think that I don't want to say necessarily 100% because there could be an exception, but most of the time we do.
Okay. And then we talked a little bit about the gold and silver signaling. Has the geographic signaling played a part in your decision on applicants that you know of?
I asked my program director about this earlier this week, and he said no, he doesn't really look at the geographic signaling.
Okay, so just more of a whole person type thing, and then if they
Yeah.
signal. Okay. So kind of going into training, what is the structure of your program? Kind of the breakdown of like your PGY2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, so having 12 residents is really great because that means we do everything in a 1 month block. So, certain things that happen every year is everybody gets a 1 month consult month. So, the way our consult service is that you do it for a month at a time. You switch weekends with a buddy so that you're not doing, every single day in that month. But we do all home call, which I think most derm programs do. You'll usually have like a half day of either clinic or telederm that day, which the telederm is really cool. It's at our VA, and basically you're looking at dermoscopy images and clinical images and making recommendations to primary care doctors. So that's one of the months you always have. Like I mentioned before, you always have a path month, which basically you're going to our derm path lab, and we have 5 dermatopathologists now. So you work with a different one every day and just look at slides. You get time to preview too. And then everybody gets a surgery month, which we do a lot of surgery at our VA. So you're kind of at those clinics, but then you might be the surgery resident, which basically means you get first dibs on whatever surgery you want to do. And there's then sometimes you also go to like Mo's private practice in the area during that month as well. And then when you're a second and a third year, you get a continuity clinic, which is a half day a week. So mine's Friday mornings, and you're usually with one other resident too. And then also in second and third year, we do peds with Henry Ford Dermatology, actually. So usually it's like 2 days a week for 1 to 2 months. You go to their office and work with them because they have really great pediatric dermatologists there. And then I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. I think most of the other time you're just kind of like working at the VA, working at Wayne Health. Sometimes there's months that are more Wayne Health heavy, sometimes there's months that are more VA heavy. But you're just kind of rotating through everywhere.
Okay. So it sounds like you all come out as super well-rounded applicants with PD experience, VA experience, path, and surgery. And I know that you mentioned like kind of a buddy system and that you partner with people a lot. Would you say that you are spending a lot of time with your other residents, or is it mostly just with the person that you're paired up with at that time?
I feel like we spend a ton of time with our co-residents because, especially at the VA, every day there's 4 or 5 residents there total. So that's like a third of the program. And like when we're doing surgeries, we're working together constantly. It's always a team of two residents. Well, usually it's a team of two residents. And then at our other sites, it's usually two residents are there. You're in the same workroom, you're chatting between patients. So yeah, I feel like we're together all the time.
Gotcha. And then with kind of all the traveling that y'all do for your program, if it's something like you mentioned, the site that's in Ohio, is there any housing or transportation that's provided for those other sites if you're having to travel, or is it kind of all within a driving distance?
It's all within driving distance. We actually never really go to the site in Ohio unless you're
Okay.
interested in applying to Moe's, then like you can. But usually the farthest one we go to is Monroe, which is 40 minutes away from Detroit. So, like from my house, it's like 45 minutes. So nobody really needs housing when we go there because it's so close still.
Okay. And so we've kind of talked about the big overview of the program, and kind of you get training in all areas. Do y'all do any training in cosmetic procedures?
Yes. So it kind of is what you want to make of it. So we have sessions usually outside of normal clinic where we'll bring people in to teach us about fillers and neuromodulators. We've also done chemical peels, microneedling. Um, I feel like we did something else, but those are the ones I'm remembering right now. And then you have the opportunity to bring in patients during lunch when you're at one of the Wayne Health clinics. So, like, a lot of us do take advantage of that. And we get the resident grants too for the filler samples and the neuromodulator samples. So, we practice a lot. Some people are more into it than others and will bring in more patients. But yeah, I feel like we get pretty good exposure. And sometimes you'll have somebody in clinic too that wants that. So then you get that exposure then too.
Okay, awesome. So it sounds like cosmetic lunch hour is the popular thing to do. So kind of moving along with that, for other opportunities kind of outside of Michigan, outside of the United States, do y'all have any global health outreach that you do?
Yeah, so one of our alumni actually, he's a Mohs surgeon in Houston, and he does a trip to Mexico every year in the mountains and does, a lot of skin cancer surgeries and general dermatology. So actually, when I was just starting my second year, I got the opportunity to go on that trip, which was a great experience. And then somebody else went last year. And then one of our residents, this isn't officially through our program. He's going on a mission trip to Kenya later this year too. So those are the things that we've been doing lately, but I think that there's always opportunities if somebody's interested in it to, bring it up and see what can be done with it.
Very cool. So it seems like it's more person driven right now, but there's always opportunity for it, and always a heart for it. So that's great.
Right.
Um, and then kind of going more into the things that medical students will want to know when they're looking at your program to apply. What are your research requirements, if any?
So when you're a resident, I wouldn't say, I think that you have to do like one project per year, or not one project per year, one project over the total of your residency. But I will say we all do way more than that, especially because we have a ton of medical students. So Wayne State is the biggest like single campus med school. They have 300 kids per class. And then we also have some other med schools in the area that don't have germ programs. So we have a lot of very driven medical students that want to help with projects. So we frequently, are working on things with them. But we're also all involved in QI projects. So we're all on a different committee. So like I'm on the curriculum committee, but then there's like Jedi, so like diversity committee as well and consult committee. There's like all sorts of different ones. And we each come up with a different QI project each year that we work on. So like this year, my project was making like an introductory derm path curriculum. So we've been working on that. So we're always working on, different projects, either formally or informally.
Yes, I think y'all might get a few more emails from anxious medical students after telling everyone. But that's super exciting. And good luck with your project. That sounds fantastic and something that's really necessary. So, And then in that same vein, is there a process for getting grants or going to conferences? Are there any sort of funding that you receive as residents?
Yeah, so there's through the Wayne State GME, they have seed grants. So I received one last year. One of my co-residents received one last year as well. I don't think very many people are utilizing it, so it's pretty I don't want to say easy to get, but like, it's definitely there. And then for going to conferences too, I believe there is some funding for that. Like I know I'm going to ASDP this year, so I'm using we have the Herman Pincus fund for going to conferences that I think one resident can use per year. So I'm using that to go to ASDP. Um, and then you can always ask at our program too. And it's just kind of a case by case basis. And then you can also apply for other grants outside of that if you come across anything. Our faculty are very supportive of anything you want to apply to or work on. So there's definitely opportunities for that.
Okay. So it seems like lots of research, lots of funding, and good stuff going on there.
Mhm.
Are there any other financial perks or things that you receive as residents through the program?
So we have a $750 I think that's what it is now. It might be going up. Book fund per year. So usually when you're a first year, you use that to pay for your dermatoscope. But then in second and third year, you can use that to go to conferences or buy books. Or I know last year I used it to buy a question bank. Um, and I think that's the big thing. Oh, also when we go to AAD, the program traditionally pays for our conference registration. So that's nice. And most residents get to go. One has to stay back to do consults, unfortunately, but everybody else gets to go.
So everybody has to be really nice to that one person that stays
Exactly.
back.
Exactly.
Well, awesome. So that $750 to kind of be used as needed for things. Um, so kind of in that exam prep realm, what does your program do for like lecture and didactics? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we do the 1 day per week model. So on Wednesdays, it's pretty much all lectures all day. One person has to go to clinic in the afternoon, so it's like each person goes 4 times a year, so it's really not that bad. So we'll do like Bologna book clubs, we'll do some Kodachromes, journal club, grand rounds, kind of all in the morning time from 8 to 12. And then from 12 to 2, we'll do our readout. So our chairman is a dermatopathologist, and at the VA, we don't have a dermatopathologist on staff. So he comes on Wednesdays and reads all of our slides from the past week with us, which is a really good exposure to DermPath. And then sometimes after that, like at 2 o'clock, we'll have more lectures or things that we need to finish up. Um, and then sometimes that's like when we'll do the cosmetic sessions as well, because it's just like, oh, everybody's, here and available. So let's do cosmetics now. But yeah, we have a pretty good mix of faculty-led lectures versus resident-led lectures, which I think is really beneficial too.
Yeah, so you get to see kind of both sides of it, people that have just been through it and people who are experts. So
Right.
that's fantastic. And do y'all have any protected time for studying or for research, or how does that work?
Yeah, so actually, one of the things about our program that I didn't know before starting is that we get a lot of academic time. So I would say on average, like once per week, you get a half day off, either in the morning or the afternoon. And that's for like working on research or studying or other academic things that you're trying to do. So I know some people have used it in the past too for like doing cosmetics and things like that. And you get more of that as you go along. So the first years get the least amount of half days per month, the third years get the most. And when you're chief resident, you get I think an extra half day per month too to work on key things.
To work on things, breathe, be chief
Right.
resident. So kind of speaking of the leadership, so you're a chief resident. How does your program leadership work? Kind of what are your responsibilities in that role?
Yeah, so we have two chief residents this year. Usually there are two per year. So the two of us are responsible for making the academic schedule. So all of the lectures and who's giving what lecture and, finding grand round speakers and things like that. And then we also did all of the vacation scheduling at the beginning of the year because we do ours where at the beginning of the year we kind of set the whole vacation schedule and then you can move it later if you need to. And then we're also, one of our big things is we're planning a Michigan Dermatological Society meeting. So for ours, every residency program in the state of Michigan hosts a meeting once per year. So we have live patients, we have posters, we have, outside speakers. So we're in charge of putting all of that together, which ours is coming up next month. So that's exciting. And then I think one of the big things too is we're in charge of facilitating resident conflict and, putting forth rules and making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And, we helped a lot with the first years with their orientation and getting them all set up. So kind of just everything, keeping things running smoothly. I would say our program is very resident driven, where it's kind of like the residents have a lot of say in how they want things to be and how things should go. But our program director and assistant program director are so supportive. And we can go to them for anything that we need help with too.
Okay, so it sounds like it's kind of left in y'all's hands, but if you need them, they're there type
Right.
situation.
Exactly.
Okay. So it seems like it's a very resident-driven culture. How would you say the culture of your program is? Like what kind of personalities it tends to pull? If a lot of people have a certain interest in a certain part of the field, just kind of what's your general thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the best things about our program is we have such diverse interests and diverse personalities. So we have like some very strong, outgoing personalities. We have some very shy people, kind of, but we all mix very well together. And it really does have like a family kind of feel to it. And then in terms of what people are interested in, it's kind of a total mix. So, like, I'm interested in derm path. Some of my co-residents are interested in Mohs. Some just want to do general dermatology. Last year, the graduating class had two go into private practice and two go into academics. So there's kind of a mix there too. But I think we get exposure to everything. So it's really easy to foster an interest in a specific area. We get a ton of surgery exposure, a ton of path exposure, obviously a ton of general dermatology exposure too. So I think we just, and like we were saying before too, like everybody comes from a different background in our program. Like we have people that did other residencies before, and we have people that just are straight out of like how I was, like college, med school, straight to residency. So it's really nice.
Yeah, that sounds nice. And it seems like there's really no limitations on if you kind of want to go a certain way, it's
Mhm.
available there, which is fantastic. So for all of your residents kind of being from everywhere, probably in different phases of life, would you say that most people kind of live in a certain area or
Yeah, so I think, I've been here for a long time. And I think it's really fun to live downtown Detroit. It's having kind of a renaissance right now. And I would say
Mhm.
maybe like a third of our residents live downtown right now. I did during med school and I had a great time with it. But when I found out I matched here, I was like, okay, I kind of need to do something different for the next 4 years. So I live in one of the northern suburbs called Ferndale, but it's like a 10 to 15 minute drive to like all of our locations. So it's really close. A lot of people do live in this area, like Royal Oak is right here. A couple people live more in like the west side of Detroit, like Livonia, Canton area. Um, I think that's where most everybody lives right now. I don't, sometimes somebody lives like really far away because of family or something like that. But right now, everybody's like in those general areas.
Okay. And then for people that are considering renting and living in that area, what's kind of the cost of living and your average rental price that you would see kind of within a reasonable range to the hospitals that you go to?
Yeah, so downtown Detroit is definitely going to be more expensive because, it's the city. So I would say for that, like a one bedroom is probably like anywhere between like 1,700 to like 2,000. And then a two bedroom is probably more like $2,200 to $2,500. In the suburbs, I think it's like a little bit cheaper than that. But people also in the suburbs a lot of times like rent houses. So you can have that as an option too.
Yeah, so it seems like kind of with your breakdown, you probably have some people that have families, have children. How does your program approach like maternity leave, paternity leave? What does that look like for those people that are in that?
Yeah, that's a great question because my co-resident is actually pregnant right now. She's going to be due in December. So the American Board of Dermatology actually has specific requirements about how long you can take off from residency. I think it's like 16 weeks total over the course of your residency. So, if you go over that, that's okay. You just have to make up time later. So, even though our maternity policy is longer than that, you have to follow the ABD guidelines because that's kind of trumping it. But my co-resident, I think the process has been pretty easy for her. I think she has a good plan for, what she's going to do. And the program's been very supportive and willing to work with her and kind of scheduling her academic time, like when she needs to do certain things so that she doesn't have to use like vacation days.
Okay, so it seems kind of malleable, not malignant. So a
Right.
good thing for those people that are in that phase of life. So I know that you kind of grew up in the Detroit area, you've been there for a long time. What are your favorite things to do there? What's it like just to be in the city and kind of where the school is located?
Yeah, so I think there's a ton of great restaurants. I love trying new places, and we have some of the best food here. I think there's also a lot of really fun sporting events. So right now, the baseball team, the Tigers, are in the playoffs, so that's been really exciting. And then our football team, the Lions, are like finally good again. We also have baseball and hockey. They're not, well, I think hockey's fine right now, but basketball is not doing too well, but that's fine. We also have a really nice riverfront that I run on a lot. I'm a big runner, and it was named like the best riverfront in the US. So that's cool. Um, but yeah, I think those are the main things. Detroit, it's like really easy to get to other areas. So like a lot of people go up north, which is just a couple hours away. We have like Traverse City where there's like a lot of wineries and like pretty lakes and things like that. And then we also have like a huge airport, so you can get anywhere you want to go.
Yes, I have frequented that airport a lot. Once they did all the updates, it's like you can get lost in a heartbeat.
Right.
Okay, so it seems like a really fun place. You kind of have outdoor activities if that's your take, and you also have, typical city life things that you'll find. So, um, and then how cold is it there right now? I know y'all are kind of heading into the cold season.
Right now it's good. It's like 65, 70. Um, I was just looking at the weather because I'm running a half marathon next weekend. So I was like, oh, what's it gonna be like? It's gonna be like 50s this week, and then it's gonna go back up to like 70s. Our winters, it just depends on the year. Like, and I feel like winter doesn't really start here until like more like January. And then, we can get snow, we can get, very cold temperatures, but like last year was very mild. So we'll see.
So hope and pray kind of thing.
Right.
Um, and then, so since everything is kind of spaced out, I'm assuming it's necessary for most people to have a car, or is there some sort of public transportation that you found people using?
Yeah, so that's the one thing about Detroit. We have like no public transportation. I mean, there's a bus system, but nobody really uses it. So, yeah, you kind of have to have a car here.
Okay. So it seems like we've kind of talked through all the nitty gritty of things. So, kind of getting to big picture takeaways, what would you say is the absolute best strength, like the best thing about your program that, maybe that's why you chose it, that's why you love it, and that's why people are attracted to it?
I think the best thing is that you can make it what you want and that the faculty is really willing to work with you on different interests that you have and get you more time. So, like people in my class that are interested in surgery, they've gotten a couple of extra days going to Mo's private practice offices. I applied to DermPath Fellowship this year and I was able to do a couple of rotations with other programs, which has been great. And, I think that you get a very well-rounded education. You kind of at the beginning you get thrown into it a little bit, which I think is good because the best way to learn things is to do them. And I think even by the end of like your first year, you're prepared and you know how to, do an excision like with your eyes closed, not with your eyes closed, but like
Close.
and you're like, how to manage, most of the basic dermatology conditions, and you're just so prepared to go out into the world.
So it seems you're very hands-on and involved from the start as opposed to kind of taking a back seat. So
Right.
yeah. Um, okay, so that's the biggest strength of your program. What area would you say your program is kind of working on improving, if there's really any?
Yeah, so I think one thing that's true at some of our sites, not all of our sites, is that we don't have a ton of support. And, the residents are doing a lot of the work, which is good, but at the same time, sometimes you're like, okay, why am I doing this? But at the VA, I know we're actually getting a medical assistant. Right now, we have two nurses, which they're great and they help us out so much, but there's so much work for them to do. Like they can't possibly be doing it all. So I think with getting a medical assistant, or it might be like an equivalent kind of role, that will really help. And then at our other clinics, we're always hiring new medical assistants too to help us out, which is great. Um, and like one thing that I do want to mention too is like we don't do our own prior auths, which I think is a big strength of our program too. We have people that do them for us, which is so nice. That can be very tedious. But just things like, at the VA, like we're responsible for like cleaning our own rooms and like grooming the patients ourselves and things like that. So,
Yeah, so a lot of ground up training, it seems, which will be worth it in the long run. But
right,
yeah, so kind of working on bringing more people into that system, it seems like.
definitely.
Okay. And so, kind of closing thoughts for you. I know you're running your half marathon, you've got a bunch of other life things going on. What's your favorite part about your program and where you live?
I love the people. I think that we have so much fun together. I learn so much from everybody, even though I'm a third year, I'm learning so much from the first years every day. And, I keep learning new pearls from our attendings. And it's a very like judgment-free atmosphere too, which I think is great. It's okay to make mistakes and you can learn from them. There's people that are there to catch you if you fall, which is great.
Okay. Well, that sounds like absolutely something that people would want to be a part of in a program that gives you space to learn and mess up and is there to kind of catch you when you need it. Um, so, for people that want to apply to your program to find out more information, besides doing an away rotation, are there any other things that y'all host to kind of give people a look or any other events that you do?
Yeah, so we usually have two meet and greets. We usually do one in the spring and one in the fall. Um, and I think the one in the spring is more like diversity focused, kind of talking about like how diverse our program is and how diverse Detroit is because, we have such a diverse population here. We have pretty much every group you can think of, which is great and great to learn from. And then we also have Grand Rounds, which if you're interested in joining, you can email our coordinator, Emma. I believe her email is on our website and should be pretty easy to find. So you're welcome to join our Grand Rounds as well.
I can confirm it definitely is on the website because that's who
Great.
I emailed. So super exciting. So everyone who's listening, look out for that day coming up in the spring. So while we have you here, closing remarks, do you have any advice that you'd want to give any medical students that are watching this, that are interested in applying for dermatology?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is to just stay positive, don't give up. It can be really hard when you're comparing yourself to everybody else that's applying and all your friends that are applying, but you just have to control what you can control. And I think it's great to do as many rotations as possible, not only to just get to know programs and make connections, but also to just learn about dermatology and see, I like the way this person did that, or I like the way they counseled the patient on this, just pick up different tidbits. And I think, research is definitely important. And I think a big direction that dermatology residency applications is going in is like more and more research. I don't think you have to have like the most publications of anybody, but you do have to have some. So try to find projects that you're genuinely interested in because that's going to make it so much easier to get it done.
Okay, so words of wisdom and advice from Dr. Olds. Well, we super appreciate your time and being here and for telling us about Wayne State. I think a lot of people are going to be really excited to hear more about your program because it seems like y'all are a little bit of a hidden gem.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for people to know about it. But thank you so much for volunteering to be on. We're super excited to have this up for everyone to watch. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, and thank you for doing this. This seems like a great system, and I wish we had this when I applied to residency.
Yes, we're so excited. We're hoping that it'll just give people a window in so they can kind of have an idea and start narrowing down things. So, all right.